First of all, I'm committed to making every corner of Louisiana a great place to live, to work, to raise children. And I know that we're struggling right now. And I know that in Louisiana, if you go back to the fall of 2010, which marked the end of the last recession, and you look at job growth, the state as a whole has had positive job growth. But you get to Alexandria and points north, and job growth has either been zero or negative. And so that job growth in Louisiana hasn't been spread around the state. And we're going to have to work harder together to make those opportunities available for people regardless of where they live. If they're in Louisiana, we've got to be working on their behalf. That certainly includes the people in Northeast Louisiana, which, as you all know, is especially along the river there in the Delta area, one of the most poverty-stricken areas in the country, and has been for generations. And so we're going to have to work together. And this is not going to be something we can solve overnight, but we've got to be committed. In Louisiana, we can never be guarantors of outcomes, but we've got to guarantee equality of opportunity. And that's where we have to make a big difference. I also want to thank you all for your hard work and coming together as a community after the recent flooding. And I suspect that many of you are in here today, you had floodwaters on your property at least to an extent that you had never experienced before. That literally happened in all four corners of the state. It was a remarkable flood event, and when Administrator Craig Fugate, who runs FEMA, came to see me in Baton Rouge, he said they're not even going to look at that flood event and think about adjusting their flood maps, because the flood maps represent one in 100 years. I mean, yeah, the 100-year floods, that was something in the order of magnitude of 1,000-year flood. So they're not even going to look at that. But you all came together as neighbors and helped one another. I will tell you, your local offices of emergency preparedness worked extremely hard. All of your local elected officials, your sheriffs, your police juries, you name it. And the communication they had with the folks at the Governor's Office of Homeland Security in terms of getting us information, making sure that they were submitting requests timely, it could not have been better. Unfortunately, in Louisiana, we have a lot of practice of responding to disasters. But the good news is we've actually gotten pretty good at it. And so I just want to thank you for everything that you did and continue to do, because you've got some folks who haven't yet fully recovered based on the damage that was done to their homes and to their businesses. But I want to talk a little bit about better opportunities for all of our people in Louisiana. And certainly I want to partner with you, your businesses, your communities. I see Dr. Bruno here today with your university. I don't know, do we have anybody here from the hospital, Conway? Okay, I want to make sure that I'm partnering with you all, with people in the community and technical college business system, so that we can make this state all that we want it to be for our children and for our grandchildren. And this is particularly difficult right now in the short term, primarily because of the budget. And I know that Jay talked about it a little bit with you. But simple fact of the matter is we inherited the largest budget deficit in the history of our state. That requires very difficult decisions, both on the revenue side and on the cut side. Because when you have the largest deficit in history at $2 billion and a constitutional obligation to balance the budget, you can only do that through raising revenue, cutting spending, or both. And we did both. In the current year, the year that ends June 30th, we cut more than $230 million worth of spending since I became governor. None of that was easy. And some of it's very, very painful, obviously. And there will be additional cuts going forward next year. But we did make some good progress in that first special session. We've still got a ways to go. The good news is rather than being $2 billion short today, for the year that starts July 1st, we're actually $600 million short. Now, that's still a big number. But let me tell you that had we not expanded the Medicaid program, we would be about $750 million short as of right now. And let me tell you a real positive thing for folks in Northeast Louisiana. It was when we figured out all the savings associated with the Medicaid expansion that I was able to go back in and add Conway to the budget. You were not in the budget before that happened because we were that short. But I took healthcare savings and I put it towards things that we needed in healthcare. And I know how important Conway is in terms of providing health care. I know how important it is in terms of graduate medical education. I know how important it is in terms of your economy. And given the mission of safety net hospitals and the geographic region of Northeast Louisiana along that delta, I was determined to put it back in. And with the very first savings that we realized for Medicaid expansion, I was able to put Conway back in the budget. So I want you to know that that is a very tangible benefit as it relates to the Medicaid expansion, aside from the health care coverage that we're going to provide to about 300,000 working people in Louisiana, and the compensated care that you're going to get at our hospitals as opposed to uncompensated care, and how we're going to have a healthier, more productive workforce. Aside from all of those benefits, over $180 million saved in the first year alone, and nobody's benefiting from that savings more than the folks of Northeast Louisiana as it relates to Conway. The other thing that while it's a nasty budget in the sense that it's not the budget that I want to implement come July 1st. You know, I presented it to the legislature because we only have so much money. We're going to have a balanced budget. And the cuts are more than I want to accept. I want to be very honest with you. And we continue working on various initiatives to try to reduce those cuts. But at the same time, I'm proud that the document does not engage in fund sweeps where we're moving from money from one place to another for purposes that they weren't intended. We are not using one-time money to pay for recurring expenditures in the budget today. And there is no raid on the Transportation Trust Fund, which in the current year, there was $60 million taken out of the Transportation Trust Fund and spent on state police as opposed to going and fixing roads and bridges. We are not doing any of those things in the first budget, consistent with promises that I made as I ran for governor. The other thing about the budget situation that I'm proud of is in the first special session this year, we actually had a negotiated compromise whereby we created a task force to study comprehensive long-term budget and tax reform. And nobody will be happier than me if on May the 12th, the Revenue Estimating Conference meets and recognizes enough new revenue that we don't have to have a second special session. I think it would be a great thing for everybody if we had enough revenue to restore some money so that we don't have a $46 million cut to higher education. I suspect Dr. Bruno would like that too. So that we don't have a $183 million cut to TOPS or a $50 million cut to K through 12. If I were able to open those other safety net hospitals that I haven't gotten to yet, which is another $70 million. If I'm able to house inmates and put resources towards the Department of Children and Family Services so that we're going out there and checking on the foster children. They are in our custody. And right now the caseload per worker is about twice what it's supposed to be. We can't accept that. Nobody would be happier than me if we don't have to have a second special session. But reading the tea leaves, it's very unlikely that we're going to have enough additional revenue to fund those things that I just talked to you about. And so I believe the prudent thing to do is to lean forward and prepare for a second special session at the end of the regular session. And there are certain things we can do, but I'm going to ask that task force that I just talked about to come up with a plan for that special session that is fully consistent with their approach to long-term budget and tax reform, so that we're not doing something in June only to turn around next April when we get into the fiscal session and go in a different direction. Because what this state lacks right now is stability and predictability with respect to our revenues, and we also lack sufficiency. I'll just be very honest with you. So we have to make those changes, but again, if that proves to be unnecessary, nobody will be happier than I am. With respect to workforce development, if we want job creation to come to Northeast Louisiana, to every corner of the state, we've got to make sure that we have the trained, educated, skilled workers necessary to take the jobs that will be available by that investment, by that development. You all do a great job with the resources that you've been given, but I want you to understand something. It is not always possible to do more with less. The state of Louisiana for the previous 8 years has disinvested state general fund support in higher education more than any other state in the nation. And at the same time has raised tuition and fees on its kids more than any other state in the nation. This is a recipe for disaster. If we stay on this road, it will be disastrous. And so we're going to have to do better. If higher education is going to be a priority, if workforce development is going to be a priority, then we have to fund it like it's a priority. We haven't done that. And I will tell you, one of the things that hurts me most about the budget I had to present to the legislature, it contains yet another state general fund cut to higher education. Now, partially because of the Medicaid savings and partially because of revenue raised in the first special session, the cut isn't nearly of the magnitude that we had told Dr. Bruno and others to prepare for, but it is still too large. We simply have to do better. We will not have the state we all want to have if we don't start investing in higher education, because this is the challenge for us. In one generation's time, we're going to transition and are transitioning from an environment where, in order to be successful, only 25% of the people needed any education beyond high school to where about 70% are going to need post-secondary education. And it could be certification at a skill, could be a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree, but that is a huge number. And the truth is, we can never get there if all we do is educate the kids who are currently in K through 12. We have to go out into the community and find adults and bring them back into the system and educate them. And one of the things I'm going to be asking Dr. Bruno and other leaders around the state to do is identify those adults who have some college credits but never finished. And let's reach out to them, let's bring them back in. Let's find a way to get them back in the mix so that we can have the jobs, not just the jobs, but have the people to fill those jobs. And so that's going to be critically important. But we can't just talk about it. We can't just have a meeting and say it's a goal. If it's important to us, I've got to resource him so that he can be successful in going out there and doing that. And that there can't be a barrier to access for them coming back, because we're talking about children, we're talking about adults who have children. They have full-time jobs. They have other obligations. They're going to have to be able to come back into college, into a community college, in whatever, a technical college, but they can't have a barrier to access. We can't price it out of their reach. So we have to work together. We have to start thinking differently. I am absolutely committed to doing that. We have to start investing in our infrastructure. We have to do a better job with roads and bridges and ports, and we are going to get there. I want you to know, in the first year alone, that $60 million we're not spending on K through 12 is staying in the Transportation Trust Fund, and it's going to go to roads and bridges. I want you to know that an additional 25% of the capital outlay program is going to go to roads and bridges, because we can't just keep talking about this $12 billion backlog and saying there's nothing we can do about it, so why try? We have to do what we can do now and develop a better plan going forward that we can take bigger bites out of that backlog. So since taking office about 110 days ago, we've been pretty busy in Baton Rouge, I want you to know. We've had no shortage of things to do. We've had no shortage of challenges. But I remain as excited, as optimistic about the state of Louisiana. I am so thrilled and happy to be your governor, despite all of that, because I know that better days are ahead if we will just work together in good faith, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Louisianans. We can get back to being Democrats and Republicans before the next election. There's plenty of time for that. But let's be Louisianans for a while. And let's engage one another in conversation, in good faith, to find common ground and move forward. And if we can do that, there's nothing we can't accomplish. And as your governor, the one thing that I will not allow to happen, I refuse to allow it to happen, is that we devolve into the situation that Washington, D.C. finds itself in, where you've got two groups of people who never talk and nothing ever gets done. That's not going to happen here. But I would ask you to partner with me and make sure that that doesn't happen. And I would ask you to share my enthusiasm about the future, but in the short term also share my resolve about the present, that we're going to fix these problems. We're going to stabilize the state of Louisiana, and we're going to move forward in a very smart and strategic way, investing again in the things that we would all consider to be priorities. We are not there today, but we are going to get there. we are going to get there. So I want to thank you for being here. Your presence here speaks volumes. Your engagement speaks volumes. And so I would just ask you to continue to be engaged, continue to speak up, reach out to your legislators, but also reach out to me and my administration. You know, I am a very thick-skinned individual. I receive constructive criticism very well. And there is a difference between criticism and constructive criticism. Dr. Larkin, constructive criticism comes with an alternative. Criticism just says, you're out to lunch, that's a terrible idea, we're not going to do that. But if you come with constructive criticism, you'll never see an administration more open to it than ours. You'll never see an administration more willing to bend over backwards to accept feedback. But that's what it's going to take in Louisiana in order to move forward. And that's what we're going to do. That's why I remain so excited, so optimistic. The best days are ahead of us. I assure you of that. Despite our challenges, the best days are ahead of us. And I ran for governor for a number of reasons. But chief among them is this, and I'm glad Dr. Larkin and Dr. Bruno are in the room. If we have children in Louisiana who decide for some reason they want to leave our state to pursue some educational opportunity to get a good job, have a rewarding career, God bless them. Let's wish them success, send them on the way. But if we have children in Louisiana who are deciding they have to leave to get a good education, find a good job, or have a rewarding career, we are failing those kids. We are not going to fail kids in Louisiana because we don't have a margin for error that will allow that. We are already at the top of too many bad lists. We are already at the bottom of too many good lists. We can never do anything about that if we don't have better education available to our kids in Louisiana. And I know it's easier said than done, but we have to make it happen. I am often introduced as the governor of the great state of Louisiana. And I will tell you, people sometimes say, you got all these challenges. You got all these differences to overcome. You've got this huge budget deficit. You've got this and that. What is so great about the state of Louisiana? Well, it's you. It's the people of Louisiana. We have a history, a culture, a heritage in Louisiana that is unique to the world, not just to the United States. We have a very warm, generous, decent, hardworking group of people that we call Louisiana. And so long as that's the case, we're going to be a great state. And we are going to move forward together. Because what we have right now isn't adequate. And you know that, and I know that. So let's get to work together, and let's fix it. God bless you. Thank you very much.